Hello and welcome to section 2.6, which is on proving angles congruent. So we have some theorems here that we need to talk about. First of all, a theorem is a conjecture or statement that you prove true. So we're going to have to go through a series of logical steps, just like we talked about in the last section, to get to a conclusion, to be able to prove it. So the vertical angles theorem just simply states that vertical angles are congruent. Okay, so if angle 1 is equal to angle 3 and angle 2 is equal to angle 4, in this drawing right here, I don't want to draw it twice, so it's just this angle that they're talking about, this picture. You can see that 1 and 3 are vertical and 2 and 4 are vertical. And so we're going to use that same drawing then to go ahead and do a proof, like we learned yesterday. We're going to do a 2-column proof with the statements on the left and the reasons on the right. And so given, our information that is given is that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, is congruent to angle 3, is congruent to angle 4. So they're saying all 4 are right angles, basically. They're saying they're all 4 congruent. And so, actually, let me check this quick. This wasn't supposed to be there. I accidentally typed it twice. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. They're giving us that much, and we need to prove that all 4 are congruent using a series of steps. Okay? So we start with what's given. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And well, how do we know that? Because it's been given. So we know that much. Where can we go from there? What's the next logical step? If we know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, what can we then say? We could also say that angle 2, and I'm just going to put equal, it'll go quicker, so is congruent to angle 4. How do I know that? Using the vertical, because vertical angles are congruent, or the vertical angle theorem, you could say. Okay, so I know that much. So now I know that 1 is congruent to 2, and 2 is equal to 4. Okay, so what would be the next logical step after that? I still have to go through and be able to prove that 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all equal. Right now I know 1 and 2 are equal and 2 and 4 are equal. That's all I know. So the next logical step there would be, if I know 2 is with 4, then I could say that angle 1 is equal to angle 4. How do I know that? The transitive property of congruence. That was one of those from yesterday. What's my next logical step? If I know that 1 and 4 are now equal, I could also say that angle 1 is equal to angle 3. How do you know that? Vertical angles. Right? They're vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent. Next logical step after that. Now I know that 1 is equal to 3. Well, if I know that 1 is equal to 4 and 1 is equal to 3, can't I also then say that angle 3 is equal to angle 4? And what's the rule that goes with that? That's that transitive property again of congruence. And so now, if I know that 3 and 4 are equal also, I can say angle 1 is equal to angle 2 is equal to angle 3 is equal to angle 4. Because vertical angles are congruent. Okay, so there's my set of steps to go through there and prove that. So you can kind of see what it looks like from beginning to end. And you can see now why you want that cheat sheet beside you, so you know which properties you're putting here for your proof. You'll want to know that. I can write this same 2-column proof as a paragraph proof. So it's going to be the same information, but written a little differently. And let me see if I can bring this up closer so we can compare it at the same time. So it's the same information as in the 2-column proof above, but it's written as a paragraph. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, that's given. Angle 2 is congruent to angle 4 because vertical angles are congruent. You see it's the same information. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 4 by the transitive property of congruence. So it's the same set of steps here. This step right here is next. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 3 because vertical angles are congruent. by the transitive property of congruence, I know that angle 4 is equal to angle 3. That's this step right here. And then I can say angle 1 equals angle 2 equals angle 3 equals angle 4. Why? By the transitive property of congruence and the fact that vertical angles are congruent. Okay, so it's just written in a paragraph instead of like this. I myself prefer this 2-column proof. It's nice and orderly, and it's easy to keep track of that way, I think. So it's just another way to write a proof. There is more than one way to write a proof. So then we need to go through some more theorems for the next part here. Theorem 2.2 is the congruent supplement theorem. If two angles are supplements of the same angles, or of congruent angles, then the two angles would also be congruent to each other. Theorem 2.3, congruent complements theorem, is the same thing. It's just with complementary angles. If two angles are complements of the same angle or of congruent angles, then the two angles are congruent. Same thing. Theorem 2.4, all right angles are congruent. Again, common sense, right? All right angles are 90 degrees, so they would all be congruent, but there is a theorem to say that. Theorem 2.5, if two angles are congruent and supplementary, then each angle is a right angle, and that would have to be. The only way two angles could be congruent and supplementary, they would each have to be 90 degrees. That's the only way it would work. So here is my example. Fill in the blanks to complete this proof of the congruent complements theorem. If two angles are complements of the same angle, then the two angles are congruent. So if I'm giving you the information that angle 1 and 2 are complementary, and angle 3 and 2 are complementary, and I want you to prove that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, there's a set of steps, and I have it written as a paragraph proof, and I've underlined the ones that were blanks, but I already filled them in just to save time here. So angle 1 and 2 are complementary, and angle 3 and 2 are complementary because it's given. So that's right here. That's our given statement. By the definition of complementary angles, the measure of angle 1 and the measure of angle 2 equals 90 degrees. That's what complementary means. And the measure of angle 3 and angle 2 also equal 90 degrees. So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 would equal the measure of angle 3 and the measure of angle 2 added together. How do you know that? By the transitive property of equality. If you subtract the measure of angle 2 from each side, by the subtraction property of equality, you get the measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 3. And therefore, angles with the same measurement are congruent. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Again, it's just another way of doing the proof, the paragraph proof. You still have to go through your series of logical steps to be able to prove something. And so bring that thought process with you tomorrow, and we'll go through some proofs together. Have a good night.